Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation, TYT Nation, Jeff Waldorf here with you on this Thursday afternoon. So we got a good show for you guys today. That would be the monitor in the corner of my screen. Just ignore that. welcome to the show. Boy, do we have a disaster for you today. Or I should say several disasters, but also something good. So now, of course, we'll start out with Donald Trump being completely and utterly unhinged. Uh, no surprise. Then we check in with Sarah Huckabee Sanders. It appears that she has a new job. Wonderful. I'm going to rage about the media on that and about the revolving door. Um, then we'll talk about some disaster here, including the Trump administration's new rule to hold children and migrant families, but children indefinitely, indefinite detention. Wonderful, wonderful. And then Brazil is on fire. Literally, that's disastrous for the planet and disastrous mostly for us. The planet will be fine, but we're not going to be fine. And then, at least some good news. While the planet's burning, there's at least somebody who wants to actually do something about it. And we've got, and I'm going to break down some of the parts of the plan that he's going to use to try to do that. So, okay. All right. So that's what we've got on today's show. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Very, very helpful if you do that. Also, consider supporting us. Patreon.com/TYTNation. In fact, let me thank some new patrons here. I want to give a shout out to, let's see, Subhan Faruqi, David Reynolds, Justin Thompson, let's see, a couple more, Greg Gillum, and Paul. So thank you to those patrons. Patreon.com/TYTNation. That's how you can sign up to help independent progressive media stay on the air. So now, I'm like, you probably don't, but that's what I'm going to tell you. Next weekend, right? So not this weekend, but next weekend, I will be in New Jersey for the Mythicist Milwaukee Minds IRL event in New Jersey. I'll be on a panel about corporate power and, basically, do corporations have a role in activism? So I'm going to talk about that. That's going to be very interesting. So it's a little bit more of a conservative gathering, which, again, it's a little surprising that I was invited, at least given that one of it's more of an atheist organization that does lean a little conservative, but it should be a lot of fun. So, hopefully there will be a video of that. I'm not sure. I will be on the panel, so I won't be able to film it myself. Let's hope. It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay. Anyway. So, let's see. Other than thanking patrons, I also want to thank channel members as well. You guys help make the show go. And, okay, let's dive in. I think that's about all the announcements I really have, other than, me going to New Jersey. All right, so let's start the show. All right. Former Trump administration. Start that again. It's one of those days, guys. Former Trump staffers are being a little bit concerned about the President Trump's mental state. As Megan Haberman and Peter Baker noted in a new report for the New York Times, that former Trump administration officials are growing increasingly worried about Trump and his actions, especially with the 2020 election. So now understand, these are Republicans, and they want to see a Republican. They want to see Donald Trump win in 2020. And they're like, what are you doing, man? Like, hey, Donald, eye on the ball. You only have so long till you have to run for re-election. So, and look at what you're doing. You're basically retweeting people who called you the king of the Jews and the second coming of God. Maybe you shouldn't do that because that's kind of dumb. Not only that, but of course, economic stewardship. There's been a lot of reports. There's a yield inversion, the yield curve inversion that happened. That's a big primary red flag that shows that we could be heading into a recession. There's also trucking that's down. That's another big red flag, a big marker showing that we are headed towards a recession. And so they're like, hey, you should be worried about that. Now, let me give you what Haberman and Baker had written. They said some former Trump administration officials in recent days said they're increasingly worried about the president's behavior, suggesting that it stems from rising pressure on Mr. Trump as the economy seems more worrisome and next year's election approaches. Okay, so look, let me kind of pick that apart just a little bit here, right? Oh, so now you're worried about the president's behavior. Now, like right now, you weren't worried about it before. You weren't worried about it during Charlottesville when he said there were good people on the Nazi side, on the white supremacist side with KKK members. No. Now we're worried. You know why they're worried? Because they're going to lose. Or look, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that they're going to lose. I'm saying that there's a good possibility that Donald Trump will not win re-election. Now, of course, that's entirely on the Democrats. If they decide to put up a corporatist, milquetoast establishment figure, well, then there's a good chance that he could lose, he or she or whoever ends up being the Democratic nominee, because the Democrats have a history of pulling defeat out of the jaws of victory. So, I want to be careful about what I say on that. But nonetheless, here are these staffers saying Donald Trump could lose if he if he continues to be a moron, if he continues to say these outrageous things and try to buy places like Greenland. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? No. Focus on making sure that the economy does not enter into a recession. That would be, fix number one, right? To try to avoid a giant recession, which I don't even know if he'll be able to do. He continues to try to argue with the Federal Reserve. See, that's his main economic issue. I'm going to argue with the Federal Reserve so that they can lower the interest rates. But wait, if the economy is strong, like he claims it is, right, that we're not heading into recession, then you would lower interest rates. And you would keep interest rates high if, you are in a not strong economy, right? So now, but no, Trump, he doesn't know any of that. He doesn't know anything about economics. All Trump wants to do is lower the interest rates so he makes less payments, less in payments, I should say. He wants to save money because Donald Trump happens to have and I'm guessing, a lot of debt. That would be the main reason that he continues to bug Jerome Powell. So, but anyway, yeah, now they're worried about this. That's hilarious. Now, of course, these are former staffers, right? One of the problems that they point out, Haberman and Baker do, is that there's nobody that's currently in the administration now that is telling Trump, hey, maybe you need to focus on not being such an idiot and actually try to do your job and try to make the economy better. In fact, they said Trump apparently has too many sycophants and not enough constructive criticism. Quote, after casting off advisors who displeased him at a record rate in his first 2.5 years in office, Haberman and Baker explained Mr. Trump now has fewer aides around him willing or able to challenge him, much less restrain his more impulsive instincts. Yeah. Again, the great example here is saying, oh, I want to buy Greenland, and I'm going to schedule a surprise trip to Denmark, to which, to maybe like try to negotiate buying Greenland, and then canceling on the Danish when they say your plan is absolutely absurd. He literally threw a fit, said, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go. I'm going to reschedule. What an idiot. What a man child. There's more, of course. Again, as I mentioned, the whole Jews are very disloyal. They show a great disloyalty if you vote for Democrats. That's 80% of American Jews voted for Democrats in the latest midterm, and 75% of them vote Democrat overall. So, oh, that's a disaster. Um, and now, he also, while discussing the trade war with China, declared himself the chosen one. I'm the chosen one. I'm the chosen by God to go and he didn't say the by God part, but he said, I'm the chosen one. I've been chosen to fight this trade war with China. Really? Really? Is that? Oh my God. Not only that, but last week, and we covered this as well, Donald Trump went after a guy that was overweight that he thought was a protester. Turns out he was not a protester, it was one of his guys. I know, right? Just recent examples. And look, I could fill in an entire show of examples of deranged things Donald Trump has said and done. Um, but, who's got that kind of time? We know he's an idiot, right? Now, one of the problems here that they specifically point out, is, as I said before, is you've got people in the White House who are essentially yes men, who are sycophants that never challenge him. And in fact, they have a tendency to encourage those worst impulses. They think that that's the biggest problem. I actually think the biggest problem is that we have a mentally disturbed man baby running the White House. But that's just me. Then again, I'm not Maggie Haberman, right? Now, I think it's fairly obvious to say that, of course, he's surrounded himself with sycophants. That's who he is. That's, of course, another problem, but not one that anyone paying attention didn't actually see coming. See, if you know who Donald Trump is, you know that he cannot take any dissension in the ranks, that he will surround himself with people like Michael Cohen, right? Now, Michael Cohen, oh, yeah, now he's a traitor, he's a rat, whatever, right? Before, he was one of Donald Trump's most trusted people. Why? Because he did everything that Trump told him to do. Even things that are illegal, which is why he's currently sitting in prison right now. You don't just do that for someone if you're not a sycophant. He surrounds himself with those people, with yes men who bow down to him, who kiss his ring, and basically, more importantly, let him do whatever the hell he wants. And we know who they are. We know who they were, right? And we know that some of these same people that kissed his ass when they were on the inside, they are now pretending to be against him now that they're on the outside. These are your grifters, man. These are the people that go into the administration knowing exactly who and what they're what they're doing and who Donald Trump is, and they don't care. All they see is, oh no, we've got power. Oh, I'm interested in that power, and then I'm gonna go and I'm gonna try to grab as much of it as I can. That's what they're doing. But look, here's the thing: the president's mental. We know that he's not a normal person. Even if he's not in mental decline, which I don't think you can make a very convincing argument at this point. Even if he wasn't, he still has some incredibly troubling personality traits that are in full display. The emperor right now has no clothes. And who's been saying that? We have. Now, the New York Times is a little bit late in talking about that. But nonetheless, they are talking about it now. So, look, forgive me, by the way, if I'm not giving a lot of credit to both the New York Times and ex-Trump people, right? Again, these Trump people, they signed on until they were fired. They knew who he was. And again, look, the guy started his campaign by, going after Mexicans, by attacking Mexicans. Now, if somebody asked me to work for them, right, I kind of want to know what they're up to. I kind of want to know their past. I kind of want to know if they're maybe insane or insanely racist. But these guys, they didn't. They said, oh, look, power. And most of them agree with him, by the way, on the policies. Let me give you an example. Former Chief of Staff John Kelly. John Kelly, right, is considered like a hero because he's now an ex-Trump official, right? Called him an idiot all the time. John Kelly is an immigration hawk. Now, Is he quite as bad as Stephen Miller? No. But he largely agreed with Donald Trump on just about all of his immigration policy. That's who John Kelly is. He's no hero. Okay. Um, the only reason they didn't get along is because Trump was too stupid. Trump would order him around in ridiculous ways, order him to do, and just like he does with the rest of his staff, to do illegal things. He's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Well, that's ridiculous. Not only that, but Trump kept getting in trouble for saying the quiet parts out loud. And that gets everybody in trouble. And so, look, and that's the thing, right? The overall point here is Trump is part of that Republican. He is a Republican base. He's what would happen if you took basically a bunch of Fox News talking points and made it into a person. This is a walking Tucker Carlson teleprompter script. That's who Donald Trump is. So for the New York Times, why are you surprised? Why do you continue to be surprised at his mental decline? It has been like this for quite some time. You just got clued in, what, a year ago? Now, we've been on that for a long, long time. He's mentally unhinged. It's obvious. And by the way, these former Trump staffers, they should not be allowed by media like the New York Times, right, to wash the stink of the Trump administration off of them. They should not be allowed. Because while the president might be in mental decline, these people certainly are not. These people knew better, and they still took jobs in the administration, and we should never, ever let them forget it. Okay. So let's go to Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Oh boy. Now, if you thought you have heard the last of Sarah Huckabee Sanders, well, you're about to be very disappointed. It's actually being reported now that she will be back on cable news, joining Fox News as a contributor, because of course she is. Now, she is expected to contribute commentary to Fox News Channel, Fox Business Network, Fox News Digital, and Fox Nation. And by the way, she's going to Fox Business. That stood out to me because what does Sarah Huckabee Sanders know about business? But well, here's the thing: they never talk about business on Fox Business. That's the great irony about this. But look, overall, here's the thing: we got another terrible person going from Donald Trump's cabinet, his inner circle, to television. And of course, nobody here is surprised. Everyone saw this coming. As soon as she left the administration, she's going to get a job at Fox News. Watch out. And of course, it's about the easiest prediction to make, to be fair. But so knowing that she's going to Fox News, what kind of analysis do you think she's going to bring to the table? I mean, look, she has at best a poor relationship with truth. Remember, she was always the one who stood by President Trump when he'd go after the media, call them fake news, tell them that they're the enemy of the people, and then she would attack the media. So not only that, but she's a proven liar. In an interview with the former special counsel Robert Mueller's investigators, Sarah Sanders admitted that she provided reporters with baseless information about the firing of former FBI Director James Comey. So she admitted to being an absolute liar, someone that you cannot trust for anything. And she's rewarded by getting a cushy job at Fox News, of course, proving that no matter how terrible of a person you are, no matter how much you lie and gaslight, there's always a spot for you on cable news. And I know it's Fox News specifically, but this kind of gets me into the problem with mainstream cable news as well. And while, yes, the more despicable people always end up on Fox News, you also end up with a lot of these former Trump staffers who, come out to CNN and MSNBC or just the never Trump or anti-Trump Republicans always going on places like MSNBC and CNN. they get these high paid contributor jobs as well. And for what? They still believe in the same policy. They still believe in the same things. They still are terrible people at their core, but they end up getting these cushy jobs. Oh my God, they're anti Trump. Oh, we must have them on the show. We must have them on the show. And of course, if you're Fox News or if you're somebody who's still pro Trump after leaving the administration, oh, we must have you here on Fox News. We must have you here on Fox News. I mean, it's ridiculous, and it's that really close relationship, that is almost incestuous relationship between the media and the politicians, because the politicians become the media, and in some cases, the media becomes the politicians, and so it's ridiculous. Now, another good example is of basically the media rehabilitating. I've been talking about this for a while, rehabilitating these former Fox News. I'm sorry, not former Fox News. These former Trump administration officials. You have Sean Spicer, that's going on Dancing with the Stars. Sean Spicy, the guy who was hiding in the bushes, the guy who said some of the most ridiculous things, at least most ridiculous things that I had seen before they hired Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who took the bar even lower. So look, man, cable news, and this is the thing, cable news and cable television is basically whitewashing the stink off of them when we shouldn't be. Again, I understand why Fox News hired Sarah Huckabee Sanders, but again, those other those anti-Trump Republicans on CNN and MSNBC, that bothers me, that frustrates me to no end. I mean, there's way too much overlap between the two. The press is supposed to hold people in power accountable, not immediately hire anyone who served in the administration to give administration talking points, because that's what she's going to do. She's going to go on Fox News and she's going to regurgitate Trump administration talking points and then attack the media. Now, I mean, we're so used to that, of course, and the gaslighting, that we just look the other way. But in reality, when you think about it, what the hell? Like, this shouldn't be normal. And I know the argument is, oh no, see what they have, these administration officials, they've got insight and expertise. They bring something to the table about, the inner workings of the administration. Well, I already know the inner workings of the administration. It's a madhouse. All the leaks that we've seen, and this is not from regular pundits, right, that go on CNN, MSNBC, and Fox and talk about, oh, how the administration is working just fine. No, no, no. The the place is it's in chaos right now, and the fish rots from the head down, of course. So no, spare me that argument about, oh no, they've got the inside scoop. I don't really care about your inside scoop. I don't really care about getting pro administration talking points. And by the way, I also don't care to get pro administration talking points from Democrats. I mean, again, CNN, MSNBC recently hired Jay Carney to be a contributor. What do I care about Obama's former press secretary? What? I don't care what he has to say. I don't care. I don't care. We need objective analysis. You are not going to get an objective analysis from somebody who worked in the administration. This is not going to happen. So it's deeply, deeply frustrating. As far as Sarah Huckabee Sanders is concerned, though, again, the only thing that she brings to the table, she knows how to do, is to shamelessly lie to people and bully the media, which I guess makes her perfect for Fox News. And that, of course, is why everything is basically terrible. Okay. All right, I'm going to take a break. We'll come back. We got disaster. So stay tuned for that if you want to know the horrible things that are in store. Yeah, so that's a great lead. All right, guys, taking a break. I'll be back in a couple of minutes. Stay right here, like and share the stream, and I'll see you in a minute. welcome back to the show. Around the nation right here, QOT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. Okay, so I'm going to read some comments here. I didn't do that yesterday. I didn't have a chance. But great comments here from some of the members. Detective Foz says, could Walter Cronkite even get hired today? Uh, Maybe by an independent journalism outlet, but I don't know. Look, I mean, you have NBC with people like Brian Williams. Yikes. That's considered a good journalist by today's standards. Disaster. So I don't know. I wouldn't know. Look, I wouldn't even think that somebody like Cronkite would actually want to work in cable news. So that's another angle, right? Sarge Tech says Sarah Huckabee will now get millions to lie in the air. Hopefully, she will make a gigantic gaffe and get thrown off the air. Well, it is Fox News. I don't know how much of a gaffe you have to do to get thrown off Fox. It'd have to be pretty bad, I would assume. Jeanette Villalona says people in the White House that leave should just keep their nose clean and stop being so far up Trump's. Well, you know. Yeah, but see, the whole problem is that the Trump people, while they were in the White House, they still aided and embedded terrible things and said terrible things and defended terrible policy. I'm not just going to let that go, no matter how clean their nose is when they, after they leave. So, and Eldridge Davis, non-member, says, go away, Jay Carney, Josh Earnest, and Robert Gibbs. I don't care you were press secretaries for Obama. Also, Axelrod, Fleischer, and Scaramucci can F off too. I agree wholeheartedly, Eldridge. That is a great list of people that need to just F completely off. I love it. I'm telling you, these people, I don't care about Ari Fleischer. I don't care about what David Axelrod thinks. I really, really don't. Scaramucci even less so. Now that he's especially doing this, oh, yeah, I was right about Trump shtick. You were his communications director for 11 days. So much so that 11 days is now referred to as a Scaramucci. Come on. Like, you were part of that. You enjoyed it. You wanted the power. And now you don't have it and no prospects for it. Well, golly gee, look at that. Now you're suddenly against it. Very, very convenient. I don't buy it at all. All right. Anyway, thank you for the comments here. Love it as usual. So, before I get going, please like and share the stream. All right. With that, let's go. Okay. Now, the Trump administration is now trying to eliminate the limit on how long the government can hold migrant families. So now, recently, acting Homeland Security Secretary Kevin McAleenan announced that the regulation change would replace the Flores settlement that puts limits on how long families, specifically children, can be held in DHS custody. So now let me give you some information about this. So now, migrant families who cross the southern border could be detained indefinitely thanks to this change under this regulation announced by the Trump administration. Now, there was a regulation that this is looking to replace called the Flores settlement, right? The Flores settlement basically said that children could not be held for more than 20 days when they're apprehended at the border, they and their family. These children also, when they're in care, have to receive a minimum amount of care while they're being held. So now, that's the old rules. That's the Flores settlement. Now, the Trump administration says, well, we hate the Flores settlement. We want to keep kids in jail with their families because, again, they previously tried to do the family separation at the border, which is a complete and utter humanitarian disaster. There are still families out there that have been separated. And by the way, Obama never did separations. That's a complete and flat out lie that you'll hear from the right wing. but I just wanted to make sure that you guys know that it's a fabrication. Now, look, President Obama was not great on immigration when it came to especially deportations, but he never separated kids from their families at the border. That would have been an absolute horrendous humanitarian disaster. So when Trump says, "Oh, Obama did it," no, no, he didn't. So now, after the whole family separation debacle, and Trump being ordered by a federal judge to not do that he couldn't do that, now they had to figure something out. Their solution: get rid of the Flores settlement and make sure that they can hold people, families, in these, in these facilities indefinitely. Well, that's terrible. Now, one of the big problems with that, of course, is we've seen the conditions inside of the facilities, right? There are several congresswomen that traveled to these facilities that, saw horrific things. People told to drink out of toilets, places known as the dog pound and the freezer. I mean, dog pound was an open air enclosure in sometimes 100-degree, 90 to 100-degree weather. And then the dog pound is basically an inside area around 55 degrees. So, I mean, these are disastrous conditions, and they're given what? Just nothing but a foil blanket, no beds, nothing like that. So the Trump administration says, "Well, we got a problem, and the only reason that some of these facilities might not have some of the stuff that they need is just because we've got so many people in there for such a long time. I mean, we're arresting so many migrants, and we just don't have a place to put them. So what's their solution? Let's keep them in there indefinitely. What are you doing?" Look, of course, they claim too. This whole thing is about, hey man, look, if we arrest the families and we hold them in these detention facilities until they have a hearing, that's going to reduce the amount of people coming in. It's going to act as a deterrent. In reality, it's not really a deterrent. There was still a record amount of people when this policy was started that were coming over the border. Now that has dropped off. That's good. I think there's been a 28% drop so far. But generally in the summer, border crossings tend to stop as it gets incredibly dangerous to cross through Mexico, through the desert, to get to the United States border. Now, the Trump administration is looking at it, though, and they see the numbers, and they're like, what we're doing, it's working. It's working. Well, there was no evidence that it was actually working before. And again, there are variations in the amounts of migrations at certain times. So keep that in mind. It is not because of the Donald Trump policy. Maybe it has a small role to play, but in reality, back when we were having some of the most, amounts of border crossings was exactly when this policy was already in place. So you can't say, oh, it's a deterrent when it's not actually a real deterrent. No, here's the thing. They're doing it because they love the cruelty. I know. But like, these are the people, again, that they don't want people coming here, right? And they want to send a message. And they've admitted that this is what happens if you bring your family here. We're going to lock you up indefinitely. And so if it's not a deterrent, though, as I have mentioned, as it had very little to do with the drop in immigration, especially people, crossing the border illegally when it comes to, the southern border, what other reason is there? It's the cruelty. And that's what this is, right? They want to make sure that families who are already here, who have already crossed, suffer for having the audacity to cross the southern border in the first place. They don't want people coming here. And by the way, they also don't want people, they don't want legal immigrants coming here as well, or people coming here legally. Now, they always say, oh, come on, we want legal immigrants. We just want you to come in the right way. We don't want you crossing the border, or flying in, which is what they do for the most part. No, we just want legal immigration. We just don't want undocumented immigrants. See, that's the problem. They're the main problem. We love legal immigrants. Well, that's kind of funny because the White House also announced a plan to enact a public change rule. that would prohibit legal migrants from accessing social services such as food aid. The Trump administration also moved an end to asylum protections for most Central American migrants. So they've made those changes for legal immigrants. They said, Ken Cuccinelli, he said, well, we basically want people who can stand on their own 2 feet. We want people who are already wealthy. And if we think you're going to be a public charge, that you're going to take any sort of public money, then we can take away your green card. That's it. And then we take away your green card, and then we throw you into one of these prisons, which, by the way, they are technically prisons. In fact, one of the prison buildings, one of the buildings that is being used to house migrants right now, was a prison before it was shut down after food riots. So it's literally a prison that they've moved these people into. And they can keep them there now, at least if this rule goes into effect, which it's supposed to in about 60 days. But of course, that's before court challenges. They're going to be able to keep them there indefinitely, indefinite detention. And that's, of course, going to be very profitable for private prison corporations like the Corrections Corporation of America and Geo Group, who also have done business and do federal contracts for the Trump administration. So that's who this benefits. Again, these migrants cost about $750 a day to keep in these facilities. I mean, that's going into somebody's pocket. It's coming out of our pocket, going into someone else's, and it's not being used for safe and sanitary conditions. In fact, the Trump administration had gotten in trouble for not allowing safe and sanitary conditions, for arguing that, oh no, the migrants, you don't need soap, you don't need beds or toothpaste. No, you shouldn't have any of that stuff. That's not what constitutes safe and sanitary. They had to argue that before a 3-judge panel that ripped them apart. They seriously could not say or make the argument that no, this is completely safe and sanitary if you don't have soap. Now the Trump administration is also saying no flu shots for people in our custody. No flu shots. So basically guaranteeing that you have some sort of rampant disease that ends up sweeping through these facilities. And you know what happens? People die. People have already died in the custody of the Trump administration. And so here we have just a humanitarian disaster that they seem very intent on making worse. And why? It's because they don't want them here. And if they are here, by the way, we're going to make sure to deny them food. We're going to deny them anything that we can do to help them. And it's because they don't believe they're human. And that's the whole problem. What other explanation is there? I mean, nobody in the Trump administration right now is pushing humane immigration reform. They're not talking about that. Instead, Trump is saying he's going out there into his rallies. They're pushing ads on Facebook that say invasion, invasion, invasion. They're coming over the border. It's an invasion. Well, and then saying that, well, since it's an invasion, you got to build a wall. That's not what's like. There is no invasion. It's not an invasion. We don't need a stupid wall. What we need is actually a good immigration proposal, immigration reform. We need more immigration judges. By the way, they are not sending those to the border. And so you got to wonder why. These policies are deeply racist. His administration is an administration that promotes and defends white nationalism. They use those talking points in proposing their draconian immigration policy like this. And if you don't see what's going on, if you don't see it, then you are purposely trying not to see it. Okay. We have more disaster. The Amazon rainforest is literally on fire. For the past 2 weeks, fires have been reported to have been raging in Brazil's Amazon rainforest. Now, let me note that it's fire season, right? But what's different than the last fire season is actually how much worse it is than it was before. According to the National Institute for Space Research, the fires are actually burning at the highest rate since it began tracking them back in 2013. So, look, we've had about 6 years of tracking these fires, and it's much worse. How much worse? Well, let's look at the numbers. Now, in total, the INPE said that there have been about 72,843 fires in Brazil this year. Now, of course, not all of them are in the rainforest, of course, but more than half of them, so somewhere around 30 to 40,000 fires, have happened in the Amazon region. That's just this year. Now, that's more than an 80% increase compared with the same period last year. There are more than 80% more fires happening in the Amazon this year than there was last year. Now, to say that this is normal or slightly above normal for an average fire season, that would be an incredible understatement. This is an absolute disaster. The Amazon is often referred to as the planet's lungs. Why? Because it produces 20% of the oxygen in Earth's atmosphere. We kind of need that to breathe. Now, scientists have been warning that look, if the Amazon burns down, or a majority, if over a fifth of the Amazon continues to burn, then we're going to have something called a dieback loop. So what that is of course, it's going to create conditions where even more trees die, and then they don't regrow. They don't grow back. So that happens. It turns what was the Amazon into basically dry savanna, right? So now that's been talked about happening. And of course, if you have dry savanna, it's not going to have the same impact on oxygen production or the sequestration of carbon dioxide, because carbon dioxide, and I know this is super simple, right? You learn this stuff in grade school. So trees create oxygen, they expel oxygen, and they draw in carbon dioxide. That's why they're considered the Earth's lungs. The other part of it is. So what will happen if we lose that most of the Amazon rainforest is that we lose a gigantic bulwark against climate change. If it's the savanna, it starts emitting carbon dioxide. And of course, that's not the only problem, right? So now we also have biodiversity, right? So there's a ton of biodiversity in the Amazon rainforest. And look, there's a lot of different reasons that matter. It even matters to pharmaceutical companies, right? So you can discover, plants with certain curative properties, right? Or animals with certain curative properties, insects, etc. And so you lose that biodiversity, and you lose out on potential cures. You also lose out on, of course, like you said, different species of animals and plants. That's very important to have those around. And not only that, I talk about biodiversity, but there's also people that live there. There's indigenous tribes that live in the rainforest that make it a home. They've lived there for centuries undisturbed by other people. And now their home's on fire. And it's 80% worse than it was this last year. So now to illustrate really how devastating the fires are, and there are a lot of pictures, right? The smoke was reported to have reached all the way to Sao Paulo. That's about 1,700 miles away. Yikes. And of course, the rate of burn is absolutely disastrous. According to INPE, more than 1.5 soccer fields of Amazon rainforest are being destroyed every single minute of every single day. 1.5 soccer fields. That is an absolute disaster. It is unprecedented destruction. So now, what's Brazil doing about this? Right. So Brazil has got a government. They're a right-wing government now. But what are they doing about that? They got to know this is a disaster, right? Well, Brazil's far right president, Jair Bolsonaro, is actually doing about nothing. In fact, he's actually made the situation in the Amazon worse by allowing big corporations to also exploit the Amazon rainforest, to deforest. I did a report before where the rate of deforestation in the Amazon rainforest has actually increased by 88% higher than last year. So, deforestation, disaster. So now Carlos Riddle, who's the executive secretary of the environmental nonprofit organization Observatorio de Clima, or Climate Observatory, explained to CNN that Bolsonaro's pro-business stance may have emboldened loggers, farmers, and miners to seize control of a growing area of Amazon land. So that explains some of that deforestation. Now, not only that, but Bolsonaro, in his budget, cuts federal interference, right? And make sure to make budget cuts so that we have less federal interference to make it easier for people to exploit the rainforest. Now, Brazil's Environmental Enforcement Agency has had a cut of $23 million in their annual budget. An official data sent to CNN by Observatorio de Clima shows the enforcement agency's operations have gone down since Bolsonaro was sworn in. So now Bolsonaro, look, this guy's the basically Donald Trump of Brazil, right? So when he's called on that, for example, he was challenged by the INPE's, what was it, former director, I should say, just several weeks ago. He said, look, satellite data, here's the data, here's where it shows your deforestation, right? That you have 88% more deforestation this year than you had last year. What do you have to say about that? Bolsonaro says fake news, literal lies, and then fired the guy. Disaster. Now, Bolsonaro also criticized the agency's warnings as harmful for trade negotiations, according to the Agência Brasil news agency. And on the fires, guess what he's blaming the fires on? NGOs, non-governmental organizations. So it's NGOs out there starting fires. No climate change. Climate change. I don't believe in that. No, that's fake news. Fake news, lies. Complete and total fabrications. Nope. It's the NGOs. You know what? They're out there starting fires to make me look bad. That's literally what he's saying. He says crime exists, and we need to make sure that this type of crime does not increase. We took money from the NGOs. They are now feeling the pinch from lack of funding, so maybe the NGO types are conducting these criminal acts in order to generate negative attention against me and against the Brazilian government. This is the war we are facing. That is completely and utterly ridiculous. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Oh, no. The NGOs who are trying to protect the rainforest are intentionally burning down the rainforest to make it look bad, to make us look bad for wanting to exploit the rainforest. That doesn't make any sense in the world. Get out of here. Not only is he like the Donald Trump of Brazil, he's dumb like Donald Trump. And one of his suggestions on climate change or something was to only poop once a day. Or I'm sorry, once every 2 days. A ridiculous advice. These are not smart people. No, all they care about is money and power. And by the way, speaking of power, Bolsonaro is also unlawfully imprisoning his political opponent, Lula da Silva. I mean, there's a whole big corruption scandal about it, where he's had judges in his back pocket. Those are the ones that convicted Lula da Silva of vague corruption charges. Give me a break, dude. This guy's imprisoning his political opponents. And his targeting indigenous people living in the Amazon. This guy's a fascist. He's a complete and total fascist that is going to do immense damage to the climate. Also, he can stuff his own pockets, while everything around him literally burns. That's who this guy is. All right. Moving on. One more story for you guys. I got to leave you with something that's positive after all this. So let's go to the Green New Deal. Senator Bernie Sanders has released a sweeping new bill, a new climate plan that would create 20 million jobs and zero out emissions by the year 2050. So this is his Green New Deal legislation, and the plan is incredibly bold. So now let me give you some of the details here. This is from HuffPost. Sanders' plan vows to slash U.S. emissions 71% below 2017 levels by 2030, with using 100% renewable electricity and zero emissions vehicles. So investing heavily in solar, wind, geothermal energy, as well as, of course, electric cars. Uh, Now, along with that, he would go after the fossil fuel industry incredibly hard. He would ban fracking, drilling on public lands, and end all imports and exports of oil and gas, and would threaten companies with civil and criminal charges for any pollution and obstruction of climate action. He is not messing around on this. All right. Now, the plan also pledges to give $200 billion dollars to help developing countries reduce their own climate pollution by 36% in the next decade. Now, that's also important because one of the big arguments is, well, hey, look, why should we do this when China and India, they're promoting, they're doing a lot of pollution as well. Well, okay, well, now we're going to give these countries help in modernizing their systems and making sure. And there's another argument too that conservatives love to use, and it's, hey man, look, I understand that you want to ban fossil fuels and everything, and do something about climate change. But what about these developing countries that burn wood stoves, right? What about these developing countries that don't have access to solar energy? They're too poor. Well, Bernie Sanders says let's give them billions of dollars to help them modernize. Let's help them. And by the way, you would think, and this, a lot of people would think Costa Rica is one of the countries that fits that mold, right? That's they're poor and they can't afford to modernize. No, they actually went full. They're actually planning to go full solar. I don't quite remember what year they plan to go full solar, but they are rapidly modernizing their energy system because, look, for one, they're an island, right? They're going to be one of the first to feel the dramatic effects of climate change. So a lot of these islands are like, hey, no, we're right in the path of this thing. Iceberg dead ahead. We need to modernize our systems. We're going to modernize, but not only that, yes, we need money, but not only do we need that, but we also need the bigger countries to step up and do their part as well, because it's actually you guys that are driving climate change the most. The United States, China, and India. And so, look, man, we need to do something about that. And so this is part of that plan. Now, there's more. Sanders' plan also calls for a moratorium on any new nuclear energy plants and would rule out geoengineering the climate or deploying technologies to capture carbon dioxide from fossil fuel plants. So that's carbon capture and sequestration, right? So that's something that a lot of people are like, hey, man, look, we can't really do anything because we got to burn fossil fuels. But why don't we just capture the carbon and then stick it underground? Well, that technology has actually been incredibly difficult to perfect, right? And so Bernie Sanders, he says, look, that's not going to work. That's not a good solution. Let's just not create the carbon in the first place so that, first off, we don't have to figure out how to capture it and continue to spend all this money on the carbon capture technology, and also figure out where to store the carbon under the earth. So let's just not deal with all that and invest in clean energies. Makes sense, right? So the nuclear plant thing. Now, one thing I disagree with the plan on is the stance on nuclear, right? I'm a little bit more friendly to nuclear power than most liberals, and I've been upfront about that because it doesn't create emissions. It does create waste, and there is an issue with that, but there's also new technologies, and I think we need to look into those new technologies that do not create waste when it comes to nuclear energy. So I guess a moratorium on any of these fission plants. Okay, I'll accept that as long as we can continue looking into safer nuclear options. And I know a lot of you might think that it's nuclear. There is no safe option. I think that there is. I think we should look into other stuff. What is it? Liquid salt and the thorium reactors, things like that. But again, we can have a disagreement on that. But I'd be okay with seeing that still in our energy mix. But if we can get most of our or all of our energy from wind and solar and geothermal energy sources, well, then I guess that wouldn't bother me too, as long as we have a reduction in emissions. And that's what's important here, right? So now, super ambitious, right? Well, there's more. As much as, just like many of others, Bernie Sanders' plans happen to include things that are connected, right? And his Green New Deal plan actually looks and goes into the economy and doesn't just look at how we generate energy, but who's generating the energy and what we can do for those workers who will be displaced. In fact, the plan, which comes the same week as the campaign released its proposal to boost unions, promises 5 years of unemployment insurance, a wage guarantee, housing assistance, job training, pension support, and priority job placement for all workers displaced by this transition. So, coal miners, you are a priority. Workers on an oil rig, you are the priority here. People who work in oil and gas, every one of you is going to have a backup and is going to be retrained and is going to get benefits to be able to survive the transition, feed your families, and then get into a new industry. That's pretty good. It does not leave anyone behind. That's great. Now, it also offers early retirement support for those who choose or can no longer work, right? So, retirement plan, that's amazing. So, the main question, of course, is that how are you going to pay for it? Now, personally, I think that if we don't do this, it's going to be a much, much higher cost. But nonetheless, just like all other Sanders plans, it does come with a plan on how to pay for it. In fact, they start by saving a total of $1.2 trillion dollars from scaling back military spending on protecting global sources of oil. So that, of course, means no more, basically protecting some of these countries in the Middle East, like Saudi Arabia, because of our agreement to get cheap oil. So no more wasting military resources on wars for oil. That's amazing. That's huge. Nobody else talks about this. Nobody else has talked about we should reduce our reliance on foreign oil and our military from having to defend those foreign sources of oil. I mean, again, I have not seen this anywhere. Now, it also adds, or they also save $1.3 trillion dollars from federal and state welfare due to the creation of millions of good paying unionized jobs. It's about 20 million jobs that they say will be created by the Green New Deal. Then they say they're going to earn money, $6.4 trillion dollars from selling electricity produced by the Energy Department's regional power marketing authorities, $3 trillion dollars from making the fossil fuel industry pay for pollution through litigation fees and taxes, and eliminating federal fossil fuel subsidies. So what we see here from this plan is a complete destruction of the fossil fuel industry. I am not going to cry about that. I'm not going to be upset about that at all. Now, $2.3 trillion of how to pay for it would come from income taxes on the 20 million new jobs that the plan creates, additional $2 trillion from forcing the wealthy and large corporations to pay their fair share. Damn. They're taking it to it. You want to know how they're going to pay for it? That's how. Now, of course, look, a lot of the numbers that we've heard about this is a $16.3 trillion plan, right? Now, the right wing has already, based on no evidence, nothing whatsoever, claimed that Green New Deal is going to cost $83 trillion. That's insanity. They made it up. They made it up. No, it's going to cost $16.3 trillion, and we're going to end up having a stable climate with a well-paid workforce. It's a win-win. Now you compare that to the catastrophic, the cost of the catastrophic climate change that is coming, which would be about $70.4 trillion by 2100 in just damage. That's huge. That's bigger than the global economy by several times. So look, that's the costs for not doing anything. Now, you do something about it, you do this plan, according to the policy memo, it would pay for itself over the next 15 years. Well, now that's an investment I can get behind. Experts, they said, have scored the plan and its economic effects. Now, the plan gets pretty specific as well on where exactly the money will go. Let me give you a couple of examples here. There will be $5.9 billion for regional economic development plans, with $2.5 billion going right to Appalachia, right to the coal miners. So those are the coal miners in places like West Virginia. That money, a lot of it goes right for them. There's actually $15 billion allocated for the coal miners' Black Lung Disability Fund. Another $25 billion goes to clearing the national park maintenance backlog. And there would also be a civilian conservation corps that would get $171 billion. Now, the Civilian Conservation Corps actually was a New Deal program that planted 3 billion trees in the 1930s. They're going to bring that back. They're going to bring that back. So now it helps Appalachia, but what about racial justice, right? Well, it turns out there's racial justice in this plan as well. It actually calls for an Office of the Civil Rights at the Environmental Protection Agency, at the EPA, and vows to give minority and women-owned businesses, cooperatives, and employee-owned firms priority when it comes to federal contracts. So they're promoting minority-owned businesses. It also promises to adhere to the principles of environmental justice set out at the first National People of Color Environmental Leadership Summit back in 1991 and abide by the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So also helping people like Standing Rock, Native Americans. So that's amazing. So look, there's all sorts of things in this. It's an incredibly long, detailed piece of legislation that is set up to. I mean, look, when he talks about transformation and transforming our energy system, he's not kidding. This is a complete and total transformation of our energy system. So now, going into it, the focus will be first on making sure that everyone is protected, that everyone has a safety net before we have that massive transition. Because I know it's pretty scary, right? So now the program would establish a special office of climate. That's climate resiliency. That's just for disabled people, right? The first 2 years will be spent aggressively laying down a social safety net, the proposal says. They said because this plan is so comprehensive in ensuring we solve the climate crisis, we must prioritize establishing a social safety net in the first years of the implementation of this plan. So to make sure, of course, that people, thanks to this overhaul, right, might lose their jobs, will be covered, will be protected, will be able to feed their families, etc. So that's big. There's a lot here. And there's more than, of course, I've already talked about. It's very comprehensive. So now that Governor Inslee, by the way, has dropped out of the presidential race, right? He was the guy who was the climate guy. Right? Well, now, shouldn't Bernie Sanders get that mantle? I think he should. Not only are there bold proposals inside of this, but also massive worker protections, new offices, programs, etc. This is the boldest plan that I've seen out of any candidate. Now, Republicans, of course, are going to scream, right? They're going to scream. Corporate Democrats will say it's unrealistic. But here's my thoughts on that. We are facing an unprecedented crisis in human history. Our society, we don't know it. We don't see it. Or maybe some of us do, right? But our society is on the brink of a massive climate breakdown. And that's a disaster. And I think unprecedented problems require unprecedented solutions. Because if we don't solve this, then we're not going to have an economy or a society. So we've got to figure this thing out. And we have to do it now. And I think Bernie Sanders' plan is the best that I've seen. Okay. That's it. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. Oops. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Please consider becoming a patron. Patreon.com/TYTNation. Also, maybe consider becoming a channel member. That also helps the show. And it gets your comments read in priority. So that's always fun. All right, guys. Thank you. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. See you tomorrow.